to create some more content for you. He's talking about some directors he knows. These are the Teenage Film Snob hiatus shows.
Welcome to Ours, a Teenage Film Snob. I'm James Chalmers, your friendly neighbourhood film snob. Guys, it's another solo show. And you know when I say solo show, I mean just me all alone. There's no guests. This is the James is on hiatus looking after a new baby series where I talk about the filmographies of some of my favourite directors I haven't spoken about as much on the podcast for whatever reason. Not because I don't like them, not because I don't want to talk about them, just the topics haven't really brought them to the forefront. And to be fair, some of the directors that I really like, their films are not for everyone. And even if they are, people haven't necessarily seen all the films in there. We did Robert Eggers last week, if this falls in the way that it's supposed to. And Robert Eggers is a very divisive filmmaker, a wonderful filmmaker, but his films are not necessarily for everyone. And I thought I would change gears. Nope, I'm not going to change gears. This week I'm focusing on a filmmaker who, again, is quite divisive. Even the films who this director's kind of fan base is for, even there, it still is a bit divisive. That was a weird sentence. I guess what I'm saying is I'm talking about a horror movie director, and you would think being horror-specific, whilst it's not going to be a broad audience, it's going to be more of a niche, you would think maybe it would appeal to horror fans in general. But no, even in the horror community, I would say this is a relatively divisive director. Today's director I'm talking about has a filmography of 9 feature films, so quite a step up from last week. We've got some more films to talk about. And I would also say he is well known mostly, at least originally, for being a musician. I am, of course, talking about Rob Zombie. Rob Zombie, famously in the band White Zombie in the late 80s, early 90s, then kind of splintered off to do his own solo project. I'm not as familiar with his music. I know a couple of hits. I know Dragula. I know Everybody in a UFO, all that sort of stuff. But I wouldn't say that I am a connoisseur by any stretch of the imagination. But I do like him as a filmmaker. I remember walking into the local Video Easy at age 13 or 14. I was in high school. And my friends and I were always looking for something twisted to watch. We were trying to find horror. They were trying to get me into horror movies. I wasn't a horror fan at the time, but they considered it kind of a coming-of-age rite of passage, that when you enter high school, when you become a teenager, you need to start watching scary films. Ironically, most of them left horror behind, but here I am clutching onto it still years later. And we stumbled across a VHS case for a movie called House of a Thousand Corpses. We knew nothing about it. We didn't know Rob Zombie. We weren't quite into metal at that point. We were starting to play with rock music and get more familiar with the heavier music, but hadn't made the switch there. So we hired House of a Thousand Corpses, and, you know, we were kids. And kids are can be a little bit dumb and a little bit pretentious and snobby. And we didn't think much of it at the time, but it is a film I have gone back to many, many times. And have found a lot to celebrate about this film. I would say beyond being just a talented filmmaker and storyteller, Rob Zombie also lends himself, I think, credibility in the genre of video nasties. We don't really have video nasties anymore. That was a term in the 80s during kind of the idea of parental groups monitoring what the children were watching in order to protect their virtues. If you've never heard of this phenomenon, I recommend Googling it. You can go to Wikipedia. There's a wonderful documentary called Video Nasties, or Ban the Video Nasties. And it was all about parents groups worried about the rise of Satanism, worried about the rise of violence in cinema, and worried that children would mimic the violence in movies and video games and it would corrupt our youth. Really, really fascinating stuff. Completely bonkers and incorrect, as we all know now that film and TV and video games are not responsible for the actions of people, but fascinating nonetheless. And it was during the era of satanic panic as well. So we don't really have that anymore. There are still, groups that do want to tear down horror films and are worried about it influencing the kids, but it's just not as big a deal as it was back then. But if I did have to put some directors into the category of video nasty filmmakers, I would definitely put Rob Zombie in there. He makes splatter films. He makes horror films that have themes of Satanism, of course. And they're very mean-spirited. He doesn't make friendly horror films Like, some horror films, there's very strong, like, Christian undertones or tones of heroism or good overtaking evil. Very rarely in the films of Rob Zombie are there any heroic characters, and if there are, spoiler alert, it does not work out well for them. These are mean-spirited, nasty films that I really enjoy watching. So, with that underway and that introduction done, I would recommend, if you are dipping your toe into the horror genre, give Rob Zombie a go. We'll talk about them. There's 9 films I'm going to talk about today. And I'll let you know which ones maybe you should start with and where to go from there. But he's got 9 films in release order. I'm going to do my best to see if I get the release order right. His debut film, House of a Thousand Corpses. The follow-up, The Devil's Rejects. Then we have Halloween. He remade John Carpenter's Halloween. The Haunted World of El Superbeasto, his animated film. Halloween 2. 31. Lords of Salem came before 31. Then 31, 3 from Hell, and The Munsters. He remade The Munsters. He's a big fan of horror. If you've ever seen his stage shows, or even just the dude's tattoos, he's a big fan of the classic monsters, the Universal monsters. He loves The Munsters as well. So I'm going to rank those 9 films from 9th to 1st. I will let you know I have seen all of his films multiple times, except for 2. There are 2 films I've only seen once, and that will be reflected in their ranking as well. I think it's hard to rank them high when I haven't seen them as many times. And one of them is just pretty much impossible to find in Australia. Even online, it's quite hard to get. So we'll dig in. In 9th place, a movie I've only seen once, one that is begging for a rewatch, because I do think I didn't appreciate it for what it was back then, but because I've only seen it once and I can't get my hands on it, in 9th place, I'm putting in The Haunted World of El Superbeasto. All the usual suspects are in there. Sherry Moon Zombie is doing the voice of one of the female characters, obviously. I'm forgetting people's names now. Sid Haig, I believe, is in it. Tom Papa plays the lead. And it's basically about a superhero who dresses up like a Mexican wrestler and he battles people from hell. And there's heaps of like nudity and violence and stuff like that. At a time where we weren't really seeing that in animated films. I remember watching it thinking it was a bit silly, a little bit dumb even, which I believe was the intention of the film. I don't think Rob Zombie didn't know what he was doing. But because I've only seen it the one time and I barely remember it, it wouldn't be fair to rank it any higher or to rank anything lower than it, simply because I just have no real memory of it beyond it being quite crazy. But if you can get your hands on it, please let me know, because I would love to rewatch The Haunted World of El Superbeasto. And I'm sure now, as an adult and as more of a seasoned veteran of film, someone who gives films a lot more forgiveness and chances, I'm sure I'd have a lot of fun with it. Coming in at number 8 is a film I've seen maybe 3 times. I think of all the films in Rob Zombie's filmography, this is probably the least necessary. I think it's a film that we probably wanted 20 years ago, following the film that kind of preceded it. But because it took so long to get this film made, I just think it became less relevant. And with the passing of Sid Haig, it made less sense to do it. And I'm talking about 3 from Hell. 3 from Hell is a sequel to The Devil's Rejects, which in turn is a sequel to House of 1,000 Corpses. These are 3 characters that are Rob Zombie's original creations, probably his most beloved creations, the Firefly family. The Firefly family are a family of basically serial killers, very much influenced by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You've got Captain Spaulding, a killer clown, Otis Driftwood, a satanic priest of sorts, or at least a satanic prophet, and Baby Firefly, who's a murderous wench, for lack of a better term. By the time they got around to filming 3 from Hell, Sid Haig was in very poor health, and he was ultimately replaced by Richard Brake, who's a wonderful actor, but the character didn't quite gel with the existing family members. It's got nothing to do with the actors. All the performances are really wonderful. It didn't really have that same vibe that the film from 2005 did. On top of that, I just felt like they didn't really do anything new with the characters. It very much felt like a retelling of Devil's Rejects. A lot of the plot points were very similar. There's a hostage situation, which was very similar to Devil's Rejects, but not as unpleasant, which you would think would be a plus, but with these films, you want the hostage situations to be pretty full on, and it wasn't as unpleasant. And even the shootout and the showdown towards the end felt very similar to Devil's Rejects. So it's a fine film. I don't think it's a terrible film. And I think everyone involved is doing their best. I just feel like following Devil's Rejects, how are we supposed to follow it up, especially the way that film ended. And it just doesn't hold as much water as some of his other films. It's still a really well-made film. I still watch it every couple of years. And I enjoy seeing those characters again. I just wouldn't put it any higher on his filmography, which may be a controversial take. I guess we'll find out. In number 7, I'm putting The Munsters. I've only seen this one once. I do need to rewatch it again. I think it's a very faithful adaptation of the original 60s series. You can tell there's a lot of love and care in there. You can tell he's really building on the universe that was established back when that show originally ran. I just feel like it just doesn't, again, like it doesn't leave as much of an impact on me. It's fun. It feels like a fun experiment. Like, can I make a Munsters film? Can I make a film that feels just like the TV show? And the answer is yes. But that's all I really get from it. I don't have an emotional connection to that TV show. And again, I don't want to be negative. I'm not critiquing. Like, it's wonderful. It's really funny. It's very sweet. Although I also feel like the film ends right when the story gets truly interesting. It feels like it's an hour and a half or so of setup, and then we get the credits. I'm like, oh no, that's when you got to the bit that I wanted to do, and it's taken us this long to get here. So I would like to see a sequel. I hope he gets the chance to do a sequel. I would like to see him do more with those characters. I think it's a really fun flick, and I think all the performances are really good, and I think it really does do what so few remakes or adaptations tend to do, which is honor the subject matter accordingly. I think it's very, very close to the original subject matter, but I just want more. And that's why it's a little bit lower. I haven't rewatched it though. I've only seen it the one time. I have to watch it again and see how I feel about it on a second viewing. And maybe I'll like it even more. Maybe I'll rank it higher next time. But at this stage, I feel like 7 is a fair place for The Munsters. Moving in at number 6, I feel like this is probably where most fans would rank his films, although maybe not, because people might swap 5 and 6 around. I'm not quite sure. But in 6th place, I'm putting the movie 31. Now, 31 follows a group of friends who are traveling around in a van. They're artists, musicians. I can't remember exactly what their job is. I've seen this film a bunch of times, but I can never remember what their job is. But they're like entertainers or arty people. And they're traveling around in a van. And then one night, the 31st of October, their van gets interrupted. They all get abducted and thrown into this pit, this kind of labyrinth underground, for a game called 31. And there are these 3 like rich erudite people who coordinate the game, and basically what they do is they kidnap people off the road, abduct them, and then put them in this maze, and they have to escape 5 killer clowns, or 5 groups of killer clowns. And it's really interesting, the concept. It's not complicated. You know, it's very straightforward. It's try not to get killed. The first clown is a little person who is dressed like Hitler, which is very strange and very unusual to begin the film that way. The next clown, we have 2 twin brothers, one played by Lou Temple, and I can't remember who the other one is, and they're like redneck clowns with chainsaws. Then you have like a Beauty and the Beast type clown. The lady is played by E.G. Daly, who you may remember from The Devil's Rejects. She is also the voice of Buttercup in the Powerpuff Girls. I think she's also the voice of Chucky, if I remember correctly as well. But she's wonderful. If they ever wanted to do like an old lady Harley, like Harley Quinn movie, like E.G. Daly would be perfect. Her in her clown makeup and aesthetic is wonderful. She's fantastic. And she's accompanied by a really tall German guy whose name I can't remember, but he's tall with long blonde hair, and just like sheer muscle. And then the lead clown, the one they hire to make sure things get done, is a guy called Doomhead, and he is played by Richard Brake once again. His introduction in the film is one of the most chilling performances I've ever seen. It's just him with white makeup, and he's got blood on his face. And he's just talking to this victim as he's getting ready to kill them. And it's truly haunting, and it's a really wonderful performance. Beyond that, it's just the friends trying not to get killed. Cherry Moon Zombie plays the lead again, Charlie, I think her name is. And they're just trying to get away. from these clowns and survive the night. And they all get kind of attacked and butchered in kind of grotesque ways. So the film itself is not overly complicated. I wouldn't say it's a complex film. I wouldn't say it's a thinking person's film. But as far as slashers go, as far as kind of horror movies go, it's something a little bit different. It's rats in a trap, and just kind of being hunted by these clowns. And Rob Zombie said that the reason he made the film was he heard that the 31st of October is the night that most people go disappearing. So he wanted to do a kind of a story about why that might be. Like, why are people disappearing? What does that look like? And I think for what it is, it's a pretty fascinating flick. And fun. As fun as a mean-spirited film like that can be. Which puts me to number 5. We're now at the midway point of the list. It turns out when I'm ranking films, I don't take too long. I just kind of get it over and done with. So at number 5, I'm putting in Halloween 2. I did a whole episode on Halloween and Halloween 2 with my friends R. Jacob Honeybrook and Honey D. They both came back to the podcast at the same time. We did 2 hours, I think, on the Halloween films. So if you want to hear an in-depth discussion about those films, you can go and listen to that episode, although it is completely insane as well. But I really like Halloween 2. It's a film that's grown on me, and I think I prefer the theatrical cut. I talked about this at the time when I recorded. There are 2 versions of the film, a director's cut and a theatrical cut. And the director's cut does do a lot of things to make the film less likable. They put a lot more tension between Annie and Laurie, which does get a little bit repetitive and a little bit tedious at times. But if you watch the theatrical cut where they're not fighting, it's a much more enjoyable film. And you actually get to see them try to recover from this trauma together, which is actually a really positive feeling for a Halloween film. It's also very much Laurie's film, where the first one is very much a Michael film. This one is a lot more Laurie's film. We have Loomis returning, and he's such a jerk in this film. The fame and power has gone to his head. There's a lot less murder, a lot less Michael killing people, which I know people did struggle with. They want Michael Myers slashing people up, and in this one he's on a bit of a hiatus for large chunks of the film. But I think, in a world where Rob Zombie kind of made his bones as being the hack 'em slash 'em guy, he made these kind of nasty horror films where it's just gore for 2 hours. I think to do something a little bit more cerebral was very interesting. And this film predates, of course, the David Gordon Green films that I'm also a big fan of. I like his trilogy quite a bit, and I like what he did with it. But this predates it. This one explores the trauma long before David Gordon Green got a chance to make them. So I do like this film. Every time I watch it, I like it more. But as far as a Rob Zombie film goes, it's still at the midway point for me. There are still clearly a few more films I like better. Speaking of which, we're heading into number 4 now, and it's the 2007 remake of Halloween. They go hand in hand for me. I think the first one is slightly better. And it's a very brutal one, even though I don't need an origin story for all of my characters. I know that was a big complaint from a lot of people, but at this point we hadn't seen a lot of it. This was one of the first ones to really dive into the psyche of that character, and I think it was done really well. It is a very hateful film. It's a very mean-spirited film. No one is nice to each other. The opening 15 minutes of that film inside the Myers household is really upsetting. Listening to William Forsythe, who's an incredible actor, spew hate at his girlfriend/wife, at his wife's children, just the way that he does is really hard to listen to. The older I get, the worse it sounds. And I don't know if I'm getting soft in my old age or if I'm just getting more empathy or what the case is, but it is really tough to listen to. But the children who play the kind of the bullies and the family and even young Michael Myers are all wonderful. They do a really good job. Sherry Moon Zombie is quite good in it as well. And then, of course, we have Tyler Mane as adult Michael Myers, who I think of all the Michael Myerses might be the most terrifying. Definitely goes hand in hand, side by side with the Halloween Kills Michael Myers, who's also very, very scary. It's not a subtle film. If you like your Halloween films nuanced and suggestive and patient, this is not that film. This is a full-on slasher. There is gore galore. It's very, very violent. Everyone tells you exactly how they're feeling. But it is exactly what I would expect from a Rob Zombie Halloween film, and I really enjoy it. And now we're closing in on the top three. Top three Rob Zombie films. I imagine these would be the top three for most people. Maybe my number three people are surprised by, but I think my top two, 100% people would probably agree with if they're Rob Zombie fans. So at number three, I'm going with The Lords of Salem. I love The Lords of Salem. The Lords of Salem takes place in Massachusetts. The original grounds of where the Salem witch trials took place. Our lead character is played by Sherry Moon Zombie. She's a radio DJ who receives a mysterious gift of a record from a band who call themselves The Lords, and the music on the record is very haunting and strange, and often brings her into a trance and gives her visions, and she gets very confused about what's going on in her life. She starts to become more and more reclusive. She's also an ex-drug user, and people are worried she's going back into the world of drugs. And things just get stranger and stranger and stranger. Bruce Davison is also in this flick. You might remember him as the president or the senator from the X-Men films back into the early 2000s. Sid Haig makes an appearance. Jeff Daniel Phillips, who's also in 31 and in Halloween 2 and in Munsters. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He's probably been in other stuff that I'm forgetting at the moment. Kind of plays her friend who's interested in her romantically, but is also trying to give her space and just let her recover and heal and stuff. And the reason I like this movie so much is visually, it's just so unlike anything else Rob Zombie has done. All the visions are so psychedelic and creepy and illustrious, and just it's such an overwhelming feeling for the senses. You can't help but feel kind of like you're going on a bad trip yourself watching it. And this is coming from someone who's never been on a trip, let alone a bad trip. But it just feels like that, and it really gets inside your head. And the final moments of the film are insane. Just completely bonkers insane. It's easily one of the best films he's made. I think it's often misunderstood. I think people are expecting it to be maybe more traditional not even traditional witch, because I think it is traditional witchcraft that he's doing, but I think that people are expecting more like pointed hats and broomsticks. Either that, or they're expecting it to be completely balls to the wall slasher horror, but it's not that. It's not meant to be in your face. There are moments that are in your face, but it's meant to be haunting. It's meant to get under your skin. It's meant to be this very ominous tone throughout, and that's why I really like it. Which brings me to number two. Number two, I mentioned at the start of the episode, I think that this would always be most people's number two or number one. I think that my top two are pretty interchangeable. I think most people who like Rob Zombie would agree. At number two, I'm putting in House of a Thousand Corpses. I really like it. I think it's a great Halloween film. I think it's a great 70s inspired film. The two couples road tripping, breaking down on the side of the highway, getting kind of welcome to this haunted house. You've got this creepy family, Leslie Easterbrook, Karen Allen. Karen Black. Oh my goodness, Karen Black plays Mother Firefly in this one, and then in Devil's Rejects, Leslie Easterbrook takes over. And she's kind of like sweet on the two men, but she's also quite unsettling to look at because she's a horrible woman. You've got Sherry Moon Zombie as Baby, and she is really creepy, and the girls don't like her because she's hitting on their men. You've got Otis. You've got this whole cavalcade of like creepy, weird, almost like twisted versions of Munsters characters. Like if it wasn't so terrifying, it would be funny and maybe even a little bit sweet, but instead it's twisted and dark and unbearable. And there's this myth of this guy, Dr. Satan, who would do experiments on people and he would turn people into fish boys and stuff like that. And it's just this weird carnival of horror. Plus you've got Sid Haig as as Captain Spaulding, who runs a museum / fried chicken shop at a petrol station. Like, that's really bizarre. But also very funny. It's a really unique blend of like Southern tropes by way of horror with slapstick humor. It's such a bizarre film. It shouldn't work, and it will leave a lot of people feeling grossed out, and a lot of people will hate this film. But if you get it, And if you can open your mind and just accept it for what it is, it's a really great time at the movies. Which means the number one film on my list of Rob Zombie films could only be The Devil's Rejects. I love The Devil's Rejects. The Devil's Rejects is a film that is constantly kind of in and out of my top 5 films of all time. As I get older, it slips further away just because it is really nasty. And it's not the kind of film I can watch all the time. The abduction scene in the motel is one of the most unsettling, upsetting things I've ever seen. And I used to always forget about one of the critical moments in that film. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to say what it is because I think it's very triggering. But if you do like video nasties, or you can handle a little bit of violence, I would say give it a go. Alrighty, sorry about the delay there. There's actually 24 hours between recording part 1 and part 2 of this episode. But Devil's Rejects, yeah, I really like it. I think it does a great job of subverting expectations. It's not what you expected from Rob Zombie after House of a Thousand Corpses. I think we were all expecting another moody, haunted house, kind of shrouded in darkness type nasty splatter film. And instead, he kind of subverts expectations. It's a road trip film. It's shot in the desert, in the middle of the day, and it makes the gore and the blood so much more unpleasant. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched films and seen like sticky dark red blood splattered across dusty highways, but there's something really unnerving about that. Sid Haig's performance is wonderful. He's so unpleasant, but also really funny. Bill Moseley, who is my favorite character actor of all time, just has speech after speech after speech, and they're these tirades of hatred, but they're so well executed you can't look away. There's a moment where he's walking through the desert with 2 of his hostages looking for guns, and he talks about how he's a man of Satan, and it's incredible, and it's breathtaking and horrible and nasty, but you're just so impressed by this performer and how he manages to handle this crazy dialogue. Sherry Moon Zombie is at her best. I've liked her in a lot of things. I mentioned how much I liked her in Lords of Salem, but this is her best performance. She's having so much fun with it, whilst being completely unpleasant and nasty. And the heroes are no better. You get to, William Forsythe as the sheriff, and he is not a good person. None of the heroes are good people. The opening credits, I would say, rival the opening credits of The Watchmen for some of the best opening credits of all time. This southern drawl country song as they're kind of killing their way across middle America is horrible and beautiful at the same time. The shootout at their farm, I've talked about the motel room already a little bit. Tutti Frutti, going to the brothel run by Ken Foray, who we know from Dawn of the Dead. E.G. Daily makes a return, and she plays one of the prostitutes, and she suggests that they should all dress up like Star Wars characters to improve business. Like, it's insanity. The final act to Freebird. This is so much more than a horror film. This is so much more than a continuation of those characters. It's a legacy of these characters. It's this bloody road trip across the highways of America. It's Easy Rider if instead of them smoking dope, they're insane criminals just committing as many heinous acts as possible. It's really unique. You've never seen anything quite like it. And I'm sure there are other films that have tried to ape it and do it, but this is Rob Zombie's masterpiece. It is going to be tough for some people to sit through. It is unpleasant, but not as unpleasant as some of the stuff that came out of the 70s or 80s. Rob Zombie shows enough restraint in there that he can put nasty things on screen, but also knows how much is too much. There's a scene with a mask. I won't spoil that for you because, oh my God, that was horrible. Yeah, it's a really wonderfully made flick. True portrait of terror. But not so much so that you couldn't handle it. It doesn't lean into the depths of the Saw films or the Hostel films, the Terrifier films. Like, it has some restraint. So Devil's Rejects is absolutely my favourite Rob Zombie film. And sometimes House of a Thousand Corpses edges over it, but not very often. Like, Devil's Rejects is the flick that really shocked me when I first saw it back in 2005 and continues to shock me, and I think it just stands the test of time so well. And that's why 3 from Hell is so low on this list, because as much as I enjoy 3 from Hell and I enjoy the performance of Richard Brake and the other cast members, it doesn't build on the legacy of Devil's Rejects. It just kind of imitates it in a way. And again, that is not a critique. I don't think Rob Zombie did a bad job. It doesn't make him a lesser director or a lesser storyteller. I think on its own, 3 from Hell is a really interesting flick, but The Devil's Rejects is just a masterpiece. So that's going to do it for my Rob Zombie director focus. Those are the 9 films, once again in reverse order from 9 to 1. At 9th place, we have The Haunted World of El Superbeasto. Number 8, 3 from Hell. Number 7, Monsters. Number 6, 31. Number 5, Halloween 2. 4th place is Halloween. 3 is Lords of Salem. 2 is House of a Thousand Corpses. And in 1st place, Devil's Rejects. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you like the work of Rob Zombie, how would you rank his films? Go ahead and let me know. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? There's no answer there because it's all different for everyone. And if you haven't worked into the world of Rob Zombie yet, I'd recommend giving it a go. Start with Halloween. The theatrical cut, not the director's cut. The director's cut's nasty. Watch the theatrical cut of Halloween, and if you like that, you might be willing to try a few more of his films. And even if you don't like him, that's okay. I've got more directors coming up very, very soon, and I'll be talking about their works. I'm not sure who it's going to be next year. Yet we might dive into the world of Edgar Wright next, because I've got lots of thoughts on him. But anyway, until then, thank you so much for listening. Hope you dug it. And we will talk again very, very soon. But as we say on this podcast every week, guys, I'm James Chalmers, and I was a teenage film snob, but I'm trying to be better. We'll see you next week.